Hi, it's Magic Lens. I'm the independent creator of the adventure romance webcomic Changeling. If you want to check it out, it's free to read on my Patreon and other comic hosting platforms. All links are in the description.
Okay, so we've all seen those Webtoon trailers, right? I gotta admit, it's pretty cool stuff. With the 2025 Webcomic Legends contest around the corner, you want as many eyes on your comic as you can get. That is why you should make a trailer for your comic to help potential readers discover your Webtoon entry. I want to give you some of my tips and tricks for making your webcomic trailer from the comfort of your own home because I want you to win. Here's everything I'm going to cover in today's video. Time codes are in the description if you want to skip around. It's going to be a long one, so buckle up. First, we're going to dissect and break down each of the elements that make Webtoon trailers work for comedy, action, romance, and thriller genres. Second, we're going to plan out and apply these theories to our own comic trailer, and I'll give you my tips and tricks on how to craft one. Lastly, I will walk you through my process of how I would approach making an animated trailer like Webtoon does, using Adobe After Effects for animation and editing. Also, I just want to quickly say these are all based on my opinion, and my method is not always the right way, but it's just how I would tackle this kind of design challenge. I can't guarantee that these methods will make your video go viral or anything. I just want to give you some fun tips on how to make an effective comic trailer. Okay, now let's jump into our first topic. Let's start by deconstructing these popular Webtoon trailers into small parts so that we can do it ourselves without busting our ass on it. Here's the formula we're going to follow to make our trailer like how Webtoon does it. Those main elements are broken down into 3 parts. We are fishing for readers. The first part of the bait is the visual aspect that attracts attention with your artwork. Pick out your favorite money shot moments and save those. It has to be flashy and catchy as you can make it, like a glittering lure that grabs attention and makes viewers stop to watch. Next, hidden under that lure is your hook. This is the second part of your bait, what makes them bite. This is the story and promise of more good stuff, like what is being showcased in your trailer. That if they like what they see in this teaser, they will find more of it if they decide to check out your comic. So pick out the most appealing and interesting components of your story to highlight. Lastly, we gotta reel them in. That means we have to make it as clear and accessible as possible to locate your work, redirect them to your comic or profile, etc., so that they seek out your work off the platform, which is really hard to do, but let's not think too hard about it and let's just give it the good old college try. This style of trailer is designed to be an elevator pitch for your comic to create hype and interest and attract your target audience in your story genre. The term elevator pitch is a short description of an idea, product, or company that explains the concept in a way that any listener can understand it in a short period of time. This is how we immediately hook the attention of our audience without them even seeing or being exposed to any of our work yet. Especially in this day and age when so many things are vying for attention from audiences, you need to catch attention within the first 5 to 10 seconds. The first few seconds is the most vital part for catching audience attention in these trailers, or they will simply scroll away. Anyways, if you're working on your comic, you should already be crafting your synopsis/story pitch to be as concise and attention-grabbing as you can. Avoid excessive world or lore dumps unless it's crucial to the story as a plot device. This synopsis for your story is extremely important, so you need to cut the fat and just put down the main elements that drive your story. Do not overlook the power of this small feature. I know not all readers look at the synopsis when they're browsing on Webtoon, but for audiences that you want to bring from other platforms, this pitch is your bait to then reel them in. You need to clickbait them. Start thinking of what are the juicy bits of your comic that will bring interest. How can you phrase it so that it makes sense yet leaves the audience curious about your story direction? How do we avoid alienating our audiences? We want them to feel welcome to the world. It should be simplified and easy to understand to make it as accessible as possible. I'm going to derail this super quick, but just hear me out. Sometimes if I'm looking for a new story to read or show to watch, but it requires me to have an understanding of the lore prior to even starting, I'm gonna dip. I'm sorry, Fate fans. I try to join y'all, but I have no idea where to even start the series. Same for Gundam. Where do I even start? I'm serious. Please just tell me the correct order to watch them in. Anyways, it's alienating and uncomfortable for audiences to be thrown in with too much shit going on. I mean, it's okay to have action and stuff going on that doesn't have explicit information explaining what is happening or anything, but dumping an audience in without establishing some of the main story elements, at least by the end of the first chapter or episode, has the potential risk to scare them off. I know this isn't always the case, but it's just from my own experience of badly wanting to watch a show, but also feeling like I have no idea what the fuck is going on, and having to read up or watch in some bizarre order can feel a bit like homework, and if possible, we want to avoid that. Anyways, back to the topic. We want to craft our story synopsis to feel accessible and easy to understand, so that audiences feel like they can enter into your story's world without too much friction. Let's take a closer look at the specific components and analyze what techniques they use in these Webtoon trailers for each genre style to focus on the tone of our webcomic trailer. I'm not going to play the actual videos just to save time and avoid all the copyright bullshit, so I'm just going to explain my notes from analyzing it. I I picked out trailers that loosely fit for each of the contest categories: action, thriller, romance, and comedy. First, we have our comedy category. I want to use this Worth the Candle trailer, for example. I know it's an action series, but the trailer uses comedy tactics. I would like to review a purely comedy series trailer, but Webtoon seems to shaft their comedy
comics unless they become a meme off their platform. Then they decide that they want to ride off the popularity train.
Anyways, for this trailer, we have a voiceover that often breaks the fourth wall. They use the brain rot and zoomer language that my uncultured ass doesn't know shit about.
Let me put it in a language you can understand.
What the bros yapping about? I'm Sigma. You look hella Ohio.
This trailer gives us that elevator pitch of the story, but in a comedic lens. Think of that badly describing a movie in one sentence meme. It's catchy and builds that hook, teasing it, readers getting intrigued by the concepts, yet entertained by the comedic angle of it. And that is what you want. Even if you have a serious story with some comedic moments, I think this angle will be pretty effective for you. Viewers can see the element of comedy isn't the only thing that there is to offer in your story, and that there are more layers to it. My webcomic Changeling is mostly an adventure romance, but it's also a bit of a dark comedy in a way. So I also like to take this angle because I think both readers of adventure and the edgy comedy crowd could enjoy my comic. Memes are super effective at getting your audience interested in your work. There are many times I've started shows or comics after being introduced to it from meme culture. So I encourage you to make memes for your comic. Anyways, let's keep moving on. Romance. We are playing with the big boys now. I know this is going to be a fiercely competitive category for all you entering into this one. Godspeed, you fucking maniacs. But we have a lot of good material to reference off of Webtoon here. So let's look at Mafia Nanny trailer with 22,000 likes on YouTube. It also starts with a comedic tone. This one has a bit of voice acting components, also uses the voiceover to give the story elevator pitch, clearly establishing the character's goals, which is to save children from the violent mafia syndicates, then introducing her situation, which is the plot device of having to be a nanny for the mafia, which tells the audience the conflict of interest. And then they introduce the love interest. And we get a steamy shirtless pic of him here. There's a decent amount of animation used here, and it's almost a whole minute in length. If we look at those first 10 seconds, they open with a tension-grabbing joke about DILFs, with the bait and switch of the meaning. But I would say the main elements to take away from this trailer for the romance category is placing your character in a situationship predicament is really appealing, setting up the reason why you have these two characters forced together by fate or whatever, but should also establish whether your situationship is either going to be sweet or spicy. I'm just gonna straight up and say it, sex sells, and we like a sexy male lead. I'm not gonna lie to you, use the sexiness to your advantage, just go for it. And we cannot forget our cute and wholesome romance angle as well. You should lean into the aesthetic as well. Think cozy, warm feelings like a bookstore or a coffee shop. Show those settings like in this one for Morgana and Oz with the witchy force aesthetic. You're selling a fantasy as well. But for any kind of romance story, you want to tease your pairings to the audience and possible other love interests for your main character, such as a love triangle and even other elements that might threaten your character's relationship with their desired partner. Set up your situationship in your elevator pitch. People know what they like, and if they're seeking out those stories, they want to know if your story has what they want. You should also collect some of your most steamy, heart-throbbing scenes from your work and include that in your trailer. On to action. I'm using Hand Jumper as the example here. I would say the overall action-based elements that work in this trailer with some of the world buildings, such as the dynamic between the two sides of the humans having abilities and some without. It established the conflict up front and then reveals the twist of the main character finding out that she has abilities which she never wanted. This is effective because the audience is able to understand, yet again, the conflict of the character's situation. This one doesn't have too much animation. I see some overlay effects such as animated speed lines and snappy editing, showcasing those impact scenes that are really striking at communicating the whole vibe of the story, as well as establishing the threat of the characters. Really effective if you have an action series, action genre. Really put up your money shots in your trailers because it is super attractive to just grab attention right off the get-go. Lastly, we have Thriller. I chose School Bus Graveyard. This edit got 23,000 likes on YouTube. So a few things that are different with this one here is that we don't have a voiceover or elevator pitch. It uses the aesthetic and vibes alone to carry the piece, which is really effective if you have a thriller story. Sometimes a voiceover can pull readers out of the submersion of the vibe. I can't really see a goofy voiceover like in the other trailers working in this case. Instead, they chose a boss-ass song to match the vibe and editing the lyrics and the panels to the beat. We have some scenes showing the before and after, which is really effective at communicating the angst and the peril of the characters that they will experience in the comic. There's some gentle animation with the hair, the expressions, and movements of the panels, as well as some slight 3D parallax. Also, there's a decent bit of isolated character movement as well. This is really effective with this genre. Horror and thriller stories have the advantage of vibes, and it works really well at capturing your target audience and people who are looking for those types of stories. So on to the next topic, crafting your webcomic trailer. So now that we dissected some of these elements that work, like great artists, we're going to steal them and put them into our own work. Here are some other things to think about while you plan your trailer. Firstly, we really need to know our target audience, what kind of readers to attract to your comic. What's your angle for this trailer? Pick one juicy element from your story to focus on. Does your story feel accessible to a wider audience? Who is your niche? Start with a strong attention-grabbing element, could be your most flashy panel or even a song beat drop. Let's also keep our trailer under 20 seconds, ideally 10 to 15 seconds long. Remember, those first 5 seconds are the most important. You don't want your readers to scroll away in that time. Pick a trendy song. You don't have to like the song. Just think of how it speaks to your story vibe and where you can match the edits to. What is your catchy pitch line? If you had one sentence to describe the crux of your comic, what is it? Remember, one sentence. Keep it short, make it catchy and memorable. What are your most favorite artworks from your comic? Which one shows your story vibes most effectively? How can you match these images to your story pitch or soundtrack? I recommend collecting more than what you'll need. There are 2 routes, one with voiceover and one without. If you got super cool showpieces, you might not even need a voiceover. Those money shots being edited tightly together can carry the whole thing alone. Another idea is choosing a song that the lyrics could match, and like what School Bus Graveyard did, then edit it to the lyrics exactly. But if you have a cool catchy pitch line, do the voiceover route. If you're too shy but you have some extra moolah to spend on it, hire a Fiverr voice artist. I'm sure that will give you the best result. I know it feels cringy to do the voiceover yourself. Trust me, I can barely handle recording this video right now. I'm so embarrassed every time I hear my voice. But you don't need fancy microphone equipment or anything. As I'm recording this audio right now, I'm actually squeezed myself into my wardrobe to avoid my echoey room and background noise. I'm also recording on my iPhone, but it works, right? So let's brainstorm how to craft our pitch. I'm going to use my comic Changeling as an example. I'm not joining the contest or anything, but I want to refresh my trailer video. This is the synopsis I have for my webcomic Changeling. Sassy, barefoot, and partially nude, a powerful sorcerer called a Changeling curses a girl to die when she turns 21. With only 365 days left to break her curse, she hires a depressed homeless man to join her mission to kill the Changeling before her time is up. I started with an attention-grabbing element. Then I included the plot device. I then hinted at the story trope of limited time to live. I then introduced the character motivation being revenge to kill the Changeling and break curse. Also introducing my story genre, slow burn romance and buddy cop style adventure. Then leaving on a hook of having limited time to fulfill her goal and threat of failure. My issue here is that this pitch feels a little long for me. I could go with a shorter pitch that it will around the 10-second length. I could shorten this pitch, or I can use one of my story taglines like stuck together with nothing left to lose but each other, misery really does love company, which I think is the one I'll go with. I really like this Marionetta Webtoon edit, or also the School Bus Graveyard one. It's pretty intensive with the motion, so we aren't going to do this exact amount, but we still want to steal some of these ideas. On to our last topic, making our webcomic trailer in After Effects. I'll admit it, I'm lazy, I like to take shortcuts, and I don't want to spend more than 2 hours on this shit. I'll go over my process and how to make it. I'm also a cheap ass, so I'm not using any paid plugins. I'll list any applicable ones in the description or other helpful ones. I'm also not going to note all of the shortcuts and every single step. I'm just demonstrating some ways to use some simple animation and effects to elevate our comic trailer. The programs I am using are Adobe After Effects, Photoshop, and Clip Studio. If you don't have After Effects, you can try apps like InShot or CapCut or even Canva, I think. Even DaVinci is another option. If you don't have Adobe Premiere, you just need to be able to edit your panel clips together to music or voiceover. Webtoon uses voiceover and some still webcomic panels, and you can still make it look really good without too much animation needed. I know programs like After Effects may not be accessible for everyone. Adobe is not cheap, but it's my weapon of choice when it comes down to editing animation like this. Feel free to stick around, but from here on out, I'm gonna get nerdy. I'll try not to get too nerdy with the lingo, so please bear with me. I really suck at giving tutorials. But anyways, Adobe After Effects will be the main program to do all the editing and animation in. I use Adobe Photoshop for image editing because it's pretty compatible with After Effects, at least for importing and isolating images from the background and also splitting the document into editable layers. Additionally, I'll be using some things from Clip Studio, which is the program that I illustrate my webcomic in. You can also use programs like Procreate or Krita or whatever art program you've been creating your webcomic in. This Clip Studio and Photoshop portions of my workflow are just for isolating images into transparent layer PNGs with half a channel or whatever. So you can use any program for that. For whatever reason, if you can't do that, I can show you 2 little cheat methods in After Effects to isolate images from their background. Main thing we want are separate layers like this, where each asset is isolated for animation purposes. But we'll come back to this later. Okay, first things first, we're going to be working in the 1080 by 1920 composition for Reel/Shorts format to catch those doom scrollers looking for their next dopamine fix. I like having folders for my main comps, mini pre-comps, and then one for import footage which can really clutter up our project window. Okay, so we're going to focus on just the simple stuff for a hot second. So we have these 4 transition types here on our layers.
Position, scale, rotation, opacity.
These elements are based off an anchor point which you can move around using this weird little thingy in the main toolbar at the top. It's good practice to set your anchor point to your desired location before you animate. For animation, After Effects uses keyframes. This stopwatch here activates the keyframes. You can hit it once and then you set your keyframes. Then you can also hit this button to make a keyframe, or it will automatically make them whenever you scrub through your timeline and transform your layer. You can flip to your exact keyframe with these little arrows here, and you can view all your keyframes on a layer if you hit U on your keyboard. If you hit the stopwatch again and it turns gray, it will delete your keyframes. For example, on how to add keyframes, I'll set position 1 and then I move down my timeline and transform my layer, which will make the position 2 keyframe. Then I set this little thingy dingy at 0 and hit spacebar to watch the video playback, and it will follow the path. You can use the Bezier handles to curve that path if you need, or adjust the speed by dragging the keyframes across the timeline like this. The closer they are, the faster the movement, and the further apart, the slower the movement. Another element to smooth your movements is easy ease. You can edit the ease path in the graph editor here on the speed graph setting, and using these handles here on the arc. If I want to animate in fast, then ease slow, then I will make an arc that looks like this. If I wanted to animate in slow, then move off screen fast, then I will make an arc that looks like this. So as you can see, you can do a lot with just these simple transformation tools. There's so much more that I can't cover in this video, but you can also switch this button here to make them into 3D layers, which will activate the 3D transformations, and you can move them throughout Z space. You can also use this motion blur button here. This little swirly bad boy is called the pick whip. You can attach other layers to parent the layer so they transform together. All the children will transform exactly to the settings on the parent layer, so they move together as a unit. You can still have keyframes on the children layers too, with independent settings for them to animate on their own while also linked to their parent layer. We also have some other really cool things up here in this pull down. First, we have a null object. This is like an empty shape layer that you can link other layers to and have the main controls in this layer. I love null objects. They are super helpful for controlling really big scenes. Next, we have an adjustment layer, which is also an invisible layer, but you can put effects like a film grain or even a blur or other color correction effects on this layer, and it will affect everything on the other layers underneath it. Try not to use solid layers, just use a shape tool. They're a lot easier to edit and more modular than solid layers are. Then we have all our blending layers here. Let's say I want to add this video footage of particles floating. I can just drop it on top of my layer and then put a blend mode on, and then voila, and it works as an overlay now. Then you have the ability to create a matte layer with this track matte function like this, or you might know it as a clipping mask. You can use the track matte pick whip here to select your mask layer and also inversion settings. You can use this pen tool here to create vector shapes and change their color with fill or gradient, and even animate the color changes in this twirl down and make shapes and edit the paths with keyframes. This is the text tool where you can change the font and animate text. If you want to avoid the hassle of animating it yourself, you can always use the pre-made animation presets here in this panel and it'll animate for you. Okay, so that's just the basic functions. Let's bring in a file. I can import my files from here. Okay, remember when I told you have separate layers? This is what I meant by it. If you want to be able to edit these separate layers from this Photoshop file so they aren't all baked together, I will make sure to hit the editable layer button. And then ta-da, separate layers in After Effects. Isn't that cool? I think that's so cool. Here are the cheat methods in case for whatever reason you can't isolate the image in Photoshop and you have it directly imported in After Effects. You can mask it by hand with the pen tool like this, I'll select the layer and with the pen tool draw a shape around it and then close the path and I'll cut it out. Or let's say it's on a plain background, you can linear color key that bitch. This effect, which you can find up here in this drop down, or you can search in the effects search bar on the side. Linear color key will make it transparent. Once you select the color, After Effects will be out for you. And you can adjust the tolerance and the sliders on the effects panel here. Some key effects that are my favorite for this type of work is the puppet tool. I use this a lot in my other video. What you can do is pin the movements and then you can keyframe the poses like this. This is my broke ass way of animating hair. I like to use a line layer and then I slap on a wave warp on that bitch and then fuck with the sliders until the motion feels right. When in doubt, just mess with the sliders. Another cool effect is roughen edges. That looks pretty cool in some cases. We also have our classic turbulent displace. It's like a warp that animates by the evolution here. You can change the warp amount and size. You also have your other general wiggle effects like these. Some other favorite effects of mine are the blur effects that you see here. They also have a lot of cool color correction tools here, like hue and saturation, as well as curves is another favorite of mine. And keep in mind, anything that you see a stopwatch on can be animated. So if you want an effect of color transition where it goes from hot to cool colors, for example, you can animate that in the stopwatch with these sliders as well, with keyframes. The liquefy tool is also super powerful, which is great for other small movement and animation. There are so many cool effects that I cannot possibly cover in just this video, so just play around and see what you like. If you want to do more complex animation, I highly recommend that you check out these two videos here. Another pro tip is save your work often, especially if you're going to do drastic change. Do an incremental save of your whole After Effects file and version it up. Or take the whole comp and Control D on Windows to duplicate the composition and then work in your new one. However, if you have nested pre-comps and do changes in those, the changes will appear in both the old and new versions. Also, when you're completely finished your work, you're completely done, you might want to collect and save the file. Go into dependencies and then hit collect files. This will collect all the files from wherever they are on your computer into one big folder with your After Effects project, because if you try to move your main file into a different location or any of the footage that was imported into your project, it will look like this. All missing footage that you will have to manually relink to each and every single piece of footage that you use. Anyways, it's good practice, and just speaking from experience, you want to avoid the situation of trying to relocate missing footage. Okay, so here's some footage of me making this trailer. I actually storyboarded what panels I wanted to use. I like to drop in everything super rough just to time it out and block out what the video will look like on the timeline. But yeah, just a lot of pushing around keyframes and just positioning the panels. I use the mask to isolate her hand, all quick and dirty. I don't have time or the patience to care about precision here. I just doing this for the video anyways. But yeah, just using the pick whip to parent these layers together into a rig and then animating them separately. At first, I didn't really like what this part was looking like, but it turned out decent. I wanted to make it seem like all the hands are reaching out and grabbing her, so I parented them to one control null and animated position while Rue remained stationary as the hands are reaching out. The tombstone wasn't even really part of the initial plan either. I just thought I could reuse this asset from a different animation I did. I'm also reusing some cell animation I did a few months back because I'm a lazy piece of shit and I don't want to work too hard on this. Work smarter, not harder, but I did waste a lot of time animating stuff that I didn't even use in this, but whatever. I feel so stupid. Like, I went downstairs to get a cookie and I came upstairs and I forgot to hit the record button while I started animating this, and so I missed out recording all this footage for the scene with Andre and Rue. I'm so sorry about that. My bad. I know I recommended to use the VO, but I got too lazy to record it and I just wanted to do this one to the music, and I wasn't gonna play it with the music anyways in the video. So I'm timing it to the song Half-Life by Twin Shadow, one of my absolute favorite songs. I chose this one because I think it really does relate to my character Rue and her story. She's, after all, like living a half-life since she's going to be dying in a year. So I feel like it just matched perfectly. It literally took me an hour and process of elimination to pick out my favorite song that I was going to use for this. So much of the process is just trial and error, and I also do things very stupidly. I just throw things in without having too much of a plan, but I just wanted to experiment with some effects and see how it turned out, and I would say it's pretty much done. I can't play with the music because of the copyright, but I'll have it posted on my channel if you want to check it out. It could still use some more refinement in some areas, but here it is. Okay, and that concludes the video. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a real gem. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please check out my other video about writing tips for crafting a masterful story for the webcomic contest. Anyways, good luck on your webcomic entries. I look forward to checking them out, and when you have them ready, keep up all the amazing work. I'm cheering for you, and I'll see you again soon. Oof, man, that was a big video to make. I hope you guys liked it, because, oh my god, I definitely don't always try this hard. Anyways, I'll see you next time. Bye!